The stories of Mahabharata, retold by Sudipta, Bhawmik. Welcome, dear friends, to another episode of The Stories of Mahabharata. In the last episode, we heard the details about the second and third day of the battle of Kurukshetra. We also heard how Arjun's lack of motivation forced Krishna to break his promise and take up arms. It was the fourth day of the war. After a disastrous third day's battle, the Kauravas were determined to strike back with full fury. Bhishma asked his charioteer to take him to Arjun. He knew only he could check Arjun's onslaught and prevent further losses to the Kaurava side. On the other end of the battlefield, Aswathama, Chitrasen, Bhurisraba, Salya and his son attacked the young Abhimanyu, the gallant son of Arjun. Although Abhimanyu was only a teenager, the five Kaurava greats could hardly manage to control his wrath. Dhritarashtra saw Abhimanyu being attacked by the five Kauravas. He veered his chariot to help the boy. Salva's son tried to stop him. Dhritarashtra picked up his mace and hurled it at Salva's son. The huge mace hit his head and shattered his skull, killing Salva's son instantly. Salva was furious. He turned and attacked Dhritarashtra. He called Duryodhan and said, Come with me! Help me avenge my son's death! Duryodhan, along with his brothers, Dusashan and Vikarna, joined Salva to fight Dhritarashtra. Duryodhan knew, even if Bhishma manages to stop Arjun from destroying his army, Bheem alone could cause significant damage, especially when the rest of the Kaurava troops are engaged in fighting Abhimanyu and Dhritarashtra. He ordered one of his generals to dispatch 10,000 elephant-mounted warriors to stop Bheem. When Bheem saw the wave of huge elephants coming towards him, he stood on his chariot and yelled, Duryodhan, you coward! You think you can scare me with your elephants? Watch how I destroy them! Bheem jumped off his chariot, swirled his mace above his head, and embarked upon a killing spree that nobody could ever imagine. He jumped high in the air and struck his mace on the elephant's head, and the huge beast fell dead along with the warrior on its back. Sometimes he would strike an elephant's leg, and when the animal tumbled, he would crush its skull with a second blow of his mace. Soon, thousands of elephants, along with their warriors, lay dead in the battlefield, with Bheem in the center, thumping his chest and dancing in glee. Those who managed to survive Bheem's wrath turned around and fled the battlefield as fast as they could. Duryodhan had to do something to stop his army from deserting the battlefield. He called Senapati, Jalasandha, Sushen, Veervahu, Bheemrath, and 14 of his brothers and said, Go, stop Bheem at any cost. Make sure he doesn't live to see the sunset today. The 18 valiant warriors turned their chariots and raced towards Bheem. Soon, Bheem was surrounded by Duryodhan's lieutenants. Bheem looked around, licked his lips, and hurled a spear at Senapati. The spear hit Senapati's shoulder and decapitated him without giving any chance to react. And then, in quick succession, Jalasandha, Sushen, Veervahu, Bheemrath all lay dead in the battlefield. Duryodhan's 14 brothers turned their chariots and ran to save themselves from imminent death. Duryodhan panicked. He ran to Bhishma and said, "Grandfather, Bheem is killing us all. If we don't stop him, he alone will win this war for the Pandavas." Bhishma was busy fighting Dhritarashtra. He glanced at Duryodhan and said, "Ask Bhagadatta to deal with Bheem. Only an warrior like Bhagadatta can stop Bheem now." With Bhishma's orders, Bhagadatta mounted on a huge elephant and attacked Bheem. Bheem roared and attacked Bhagadatta with his mace. Bhagadatta stood on top of the elephant, pulled out his most powerful weapon and hurled it at Bheem. The weapon struck Bheem's chest and knocked him out. He rolled down on his chariot and lay unconscious. Bhagadatta commanded his elephant to trample down Bheem and finish him off for good. Ghatotkach, the demon son of Bheem and Hidimba, was fighting nearby. When he saw his father lay unconscious and about to be stamped to death by Bhagadatta's elephant, the shape-shifter demon instantly transformed himself into a huge giant. He then mounted on Airavat, the elephant, twice the size of Bhagadatta's elephant, and attacked Bhagadatta. His companion demon warriors mounted on giant elephants and joined Ghatotkach to defend Bheem. Watching the huge demon elephants of Ghatotkach blowing their trumpets and hurling down the battlefield to attack, Bhagadatta's elephant panicked and ran for his life with Bhagadatta on his back. Bhishma, Drona, Duryodhan and the other Kaurava warriors joined forces to help Bhagadatta and stop Ghatotkach's rampage. Yudhishthir called his generals and said, "Go, help Ghatotkach, stop Duryodhan and Drona from reaching them." Ghatotkach showed no signs of slowing down. He kept on chasing Bhagadatta and killed whoever came his way. His huge, grotesque appearance and ear-piercing cries struck terror in the hearts of the Kaurava soldiers. They began to flee in hordes. Bhishma knew it would be impossible to stop Ghatotkach today. He would do anything to avenge his father's defeat in the hands of Bhagadatta. Bhishma watched the sun hanging over the western horizon and thought it would be better to call off the day's battle to prevent further damage. He called Duryodhan and said, "I don't intend to fight Ghatotkach today. Our men are tired and the sun will set any moment now. Let's announce the end of the day's battle and return to our camps." He blew the conch shell announcing the ceasefire for the day, and the Kaurava soldiers sighed in relief. That evening, when Bhishma was about to retire, Duryodhan stepped into his tent. Bhishma looked up and said, "What is it, Duryodhan? What brings you here at this time of the night?" Duryodhan sat down at Bhishma's feet and said, "Grandfather, I hate to repeat myself, but it seems the war is slipping out of our hands. I could never imagine with great warriors like you, Dronacharya, Salya, Kripacharya, Aswathama, Bhagadatta, Bhurisraba, and many others on our side, we had to suffer such enormous losses in the hands of the Pandavas. I simply don't understand how this is possible. What is it that we are doing wrong?" Bhishma sighed and said, "You really don't know? Well, that's not surprising either. I told you several times, but you chose to ignore me. Listen to me now. The Pandavas are blessed by the presence of Lord Krishna on their side. Even when he is not fighting, Krishna's mere presence makes the Pandavas invincible. So I advise, give up your idea of conquering them. It's still not late to make peace with the Pandavas, and there is no dishonor in surrendering to Lord Krishna. That's the only way to save yourselves, your brothers, and thousands of your soldiers. Else, prepare to face total annihilation. Now please, leave my tent. I need some rest before tomorrow's battle." On the fifth day, Bhishma arranged his army in the Makara or the water demon formation, and the Pandavas created the eagle formation. Just as the conch shells ran out to mark the start of the battle, the two armies pounced upon each other. Emboldened by their previous day's gains, the Pandavas attacked their enemy with renewed vigor. The Kaurava army had no other option but to retreat. Duryodhan ran to Drona and said, Sir, please do something. I know if you want, you can defeat the gods. Now please rise to the occasion and help us. Duryodhan's words, however, did not please Drona. With a scornful look, he said, You are a fool, and that's why you fail to see the reality. Nobody can defeat the Pandavas, not even me. Now get out of my way and let me do my job. Bhishma, on the other end, was engaged in a violent battle with Arjuna. Unlike the previous days, Arjuna showed no signs of weakness and reverence towards Bhishma. Bhishma too didn't seem to give him any slack. Duryodhan, after being scolded by his teacher Dronacharya, faced Bheem in battle. Their maces struck with loud bangs and ran shivers down the spine of the soldiers. Yudhishthir battled with Salva while Drona fought Satyaki. Arrows, spears, maces and other deadly weapons whizzed past in all directions, and heads fell off the shoulders of the slain soldiers like hailstorm. Satyaki's 10 sons surrounded Bhurisraba and rained arrows at him. Bhurisraba pulled out his lance and in one big sweep killed all the 10 brothers. When Satyaki heard the news, he stormed through the battlefield and attacked Bhurisraba. You killed my sons! Now I will kill you! Defend yourself if you can! Yelled Satyaki as he hurled his mace at Bhurisraba. Bhurisraba ducked, but the mace shattered his chariot mast. In no time, both Bhurisraba and Satyaki lost their chariots and horses. With machetes and shields in their arms, they faced each other on the ground. And when they struck each other, splinters sparked off their weapons. Their loud cries and roars rang through the battlefield, and everybody stopped their fight to watch the two giants clash against each other. Suddenly, Bheem ran in and pulled Satyaki on his chariot. On the other end, Duryodhan picked up Bhurisraba. Neither party wanted to lose their prized warriors on the end of the 5th day. Soon, the sun went down behind the western horizon, and Bhishma blew his conch shell to call it a day. On the 6th day, the Pandava chief Dhrishtadyumna directed his army to create the Makara formation, while Bhishma arranged his army in the crane formation. Bhishma and Drona engaged in a tremendous battle against Bheem and Arjuna. The relentless stream of arrows from both sides killed thousands. Soldiers from both sides ran to save themselves from impending death. In the palace of Hastinapur, listening to Sanjay's narration of the battle, the blind King Dhritarashtra said, How is this possible, Sanjay? My soldiers are strong and powerful. We carefully pick the best soldiers who are well trained, using all kinds of weapons, and we pay them good money for their service. I made sure not to hire anybody without thoroughly testing their skills. We engaged experienced and skilled warriors to lead them. Still, I find them lose miserably to the Pandavas. Why is this happening? Maybe the gods themselves have joined the Pandavas and have been killing your soldiers mercilessly. My son is a fool. Vidur gave him the right advice, but Duryodhan chose to ignore. Now, we all have to suffer the consequences. This is our destiny. Sanjay looked at the depressed king and said, O king, it was your fault that you let the evil game of dice happen. Your destiny was sealed at that moment. Dhritarashtra sighed and waved his hand, and Sanjay continued his narration. In the battlefield, Bheem called his charioteer and said, "Stop. Wait here. I want to destroy the Kauravas with my mace." Bheem jumped off the chariot with his huge mace and stormed into the Kaurava formation with a huge roar. His mace struck whoever came in front of him: elephants, horses, soldiers. With each blow, Bheem killed dozens of enemy soldiers. The Kaurava charioteers tried to stop him and riddled Bheem with arrows from all directions. But Bheem couldn't be stopped. He went on with his rampage like a madman. When Dhritarashtra saw Bheem's empty chariot, he was worried. The charioteer pointed him to the direction where Bheem went. Dhritarashtra drove his chariot and saw Bheem roaring like a lion and crushing the Kaurava soldiers' skulls with his mace. His body was riddled with arrows, with blood gushing out of his wounds. Dhritarashtra yelled at Bheem, "Come to my chariot! Your wounds needs to be treated." Bheem didn't listen. He continued with his killing spree. Dhritarashtra jumped off his chariot and held Bheem by his hand and dragged him to his chariot. Quickly, he pulled out the arrows from Bheem's body and asked his charioteer to take him to a clearing. Duryodhan saw this from a distance and knew this was the opportunity he was waiting for. Bheem is weak and tired and being treated by Dhritarashtra. This is the right moment to strike and kill his arch-rival. He drove his chariot towards Dhritarashtra and called his brothers to back him up. Dhritarashtra didn't have any time to fight Duryodhan. He picked up his pramohan, or the hypnosis weapon, and hurled it at Duryodhan. The weapon exploded, and in the next instant, Duryodhan and his brothers lay unconscious on their chariot floor. Dhritarashtra took Bheem to a clearing and washed his wounds and gave him water to drink. On Dhritarashtra's advice, Bheem rested a little, and soon he was ready to get back to fight. When Bhishma heard of Duryodhan, he rushed to his help. He knew it was the effect of Dhritarashtra's hypnosis weapon. He exploded his pragyastra, the consciousness weapon, and it woke up Duryodhan and his brothers. Yudhishthir called upon Abhimanyu and Dhrishtaketu to take their armies and help Bheem and Dhritarashtra. They arranged their army in a needle-shaped formation and pierced into the Kaurava army, and a fierce battle broke out. As the sun hung towards the western horizon, Bheem yelled at Duryodhan, "This is the moment I've been waiting for all my life. If you don't stop fighting, I will kill you today and avenge the humiliation of my mother Kunti and my darling Draupadi. Come forward and let me free you of your sins forever." Bheem's arrows shattered Duryodhan's bow and killed his horses. The relentless arrows struck him so hard, Duryodhan fell down unconscious once again. Kripacharya, who was fighting nearby, swung by his chariot and picked up Duryodhan to save him. That afternoon, Abhimanyu and the other Pandava sons killed Vikarna, Durmukh, Jayatsen, and Dushkarna, the 4 brothers of Duryodhan. The battle continued after dark, as both Bhishma and Dhritarashtra were too busy fighting and failed to notice the sun going down the horizon. When it was too dark to fight, Bhishma came to his senses and blew his conch shell to announce the end of the day's battle. The soldiers sighed in relief and dragged their tired bodies to their camps.
The Stories of Mahabharata is written, directed and told by Sudipta Bhawmik. Sound design by Omkar Bhawmik and music by Avi Ziv. Find us online at facebook.com/Mahabharata podcast. Join the group for updates and news. Subscribe to the podcast using iTunes or any other podcast catcher. On Twitter, we are at Mahabharat Audio. The podcast is distributed under the Creative Commons non-commercial license.